Recently, I came into the possession of this Les Paul Gold Top. It's a 98 classic model evoking the look of the 1960s era instruments. One divergence from that template is the pickups. Firstly, they are uncovered, to which Slash fans will probably approve, and secondly, they're not exactly the PAF style pickups that were in the guitars in the late 50s and early 60s. While the neck position reads in the ballpark of an overwound PAF, the bridge position is significantly hotter, reading out almost twice as much as an era-correct pickup would. Measuring the pickups on my 2001 Gothic Flying V, we get round about the same readings. If we check out the specs for these late 90s, early 2000s instruments, we can see that there were a couple of different types of pickups that Gibson were installing in their guitars at that point. Modern, hot pickups with ceramic magnets, the 500T and 496R is what I believe is in both of these guitars. Even in guitars which have a matched set of the same pickup model, we'll find that the two of them read differently. Here I have my Ibanez Xiphus, for example, which has DiMaggio deactivator pickups, and when we take the measurements of these, we'll find that they indeed read differently. The DiMaggio website even states that the bridge pickup is 25% louder than the neck, and both are specifically tuned for tonal balance. So when it comes to the question of are neck pickups different from bridge pickups, the answer is yes. Perhaps not all of the time, but for the majority of cases they differ in three distinct ways. The number of turns on the coil, the type of magnets being used, and their string spacing. But knowing they do differ is only one part of the story. Knowing why they differ and how to design a properly balanced set of pickups is what we are here to learn. And speaking of learning, Skillshare are sponsoring this video, so let me tell you about them. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators on topics including graphic design and illustration, photography and video editing, and music production and theory. These classes are all curated specifically for learning, so you won't have to endure the interruption of adverts, and there's new original content being created all the time. Recently, I've been branching out into using more of Adobe's programs to create graphical elements and animations for my videos, but that does mean I have to learn a lot of new software like Illustrator, which can be a very daunting process. Fortunately, there are a large number of classes on Skillshare dedicated to this topic, including DKNG's 10 tips and tricks to speed up your Illustrator workflow, which is helping me discover all the keyboard shortcuts I didn't know existed. Of course, if you'd rather just brush up on your indoor gardening or your watercolor technique, Skillshare has classes for those as well. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial, which is plenty of time to learn a lot of new skills. So what are you waiting for? Get lost in your creativity with Skillshare. The first thing we need to consider in this question is the physics of the guitar string itself. The string has fixed node points, one at the saddle and one at the nut. And when we set the string in motion, there's a lot of movement in the middle of the string, and that movement gets less and less as we approach the nodes. This results in the string sounding much louder and fuller at its midpoint where the movement is the greatest, and a lot quieter and brighter at a place where the movement is much less. An effective way to demonstrate this is to initiate the attack by strumming the string at different locations, which imparts its tonality at that area onto the entire sound. Similarly, placing a microphone at these 2 points on the guitar string would capture a different tonality. And that's all guitar pickups really are. They're just a microphone, although ones that pick up the string's movement directly rather than waiting for sound waves in air to push a diaphragm. I've got a video all about how microphones work if you want to find out more about that. If you had a guitar with a single pickup that could slide into any position under the string, it would sound different at every location due to it sensing a different section of the string. It also explains why some guitars have pickups that are angled with respect to the strings, but that's a discussion for another time. With that established, we can infer that if a guitar had two identical pickups in the bridge and the neck, they would both sound different simply due to them being at a different place underneath the string. So that raises the question, if they would sound different anyway, why do we go through the effort of designing two different models for bridge and neck? And the answer is to make a balanced set of pickups. Now, it wouldn't make sense for a guitar to have a neck pickup that was significantly louder than the bridge pickup, so we design each model to compensate for where it's going to sit under the string. The first design aspect we need to consider is the string spacing. We'll note that for every standard guitar, the string spacing at the bridge is wider than the string spacing at the nut, meaning that the strings converge towards the headstock. The string spacing here is wider than the string spacing here, and in order to keep the pole pieces under the strings where they need to be, the spacing between each of the poles on the neck pickup is narrower than it is at the bridge pickup. We see this all the time on humbuckers, most of the time on P90s, but when it comes to Strat single coil pickups, they all tend to have the same spacing regardless of what position they're in. Let's look at the winding itself. If you've watched my Almost Everything You Need to Know About Guitar Pickups video, then you'll know that the more copper we wind onto the coil, the stronger the coil's inductive properties are, and the louder a signal it can produce. Now, the size of the coil isn't the only thing that affects the output of the signal, but it is one of the factors. Since the neck position pickup is going to be intrinsically louder due to its position and the bridge position intrinsically quieter, it makes sense then to wind the bridge position to have more output and wind the neck to have slightly less to compensate and balance for where they're placed. And this is what we're demonstrating with measuring the DC resistance. How much copper is on one coil compared to another. DC resistance is a completely useless metric in almost every other regards, but it does inform us that 1, the coil is unbroken and not damaged, 2, it's wired how we intend it to be wired, and 3, it tells us how much copper there is on one coil compared to another. In my P90 video where I wound the pickups for this guitar, I intentionally wound the neck position to have 10% less turns than the bridge in order to compensate for the louder placement of the pickup. But it's not just volume balancing that the number of turns affects. The larger the coil, the larger its inductance, which lowers its resonant peak, and that's the most prominent frequency of the pickup. Fatter coils generally have a thicker, warmer sound, whereas thinner coils sound brighter. By winding the bridge pickup a little more, we give it more output, but we also make the sound a little thicker, compensating for the brightness of the position that it's in. Conversely, winding the neck pickup a little less gives it less output, but also a little brighter a sound, compensating for the much warmer position that it's in. We see this happen with matched sets of pickups all the time. Magnets also play an important role in both the output level and tonality of the pickup, and therefore it's not uncommon to see a set of pickups where the bridge pickup has a more powerful magnet than the neck. For example, the set of pickups in my Strat has stronger magnets in the bridge position than it does in the middle and neck. However, my set of P90s in the Friedman has the same magnets in each and relies solely on the difference in the coil turns to make the difference. In a set where both pickups are the same model, then the differences will be relatively slight. The designer will be trying to get each pickup to have reasonably similar performance regardless of what position it's being used in. And if that means changing the number of turns and the magnets to achieve it, then it's worth doing. Although many manufacturers and players will choose two completely different pickups that will complement each other in the positions they're going to be placed. That's what Gibson did with this Les Paul and the Flying V, chose the bridge pickup to be a lot hotter than the neck, which is particularly advantageous for a guitar that's going to be playing with a lot of distortion in aggressive musical styles, where the bridge position is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. For my guitarton build, I wound two very different pickups for the neck and bridge position, but they ended up complementing each other very well in the final instrument. When taking measurements of those pickups, the bridge unit was around 15 kilo ohms, where the neck was 8.5k, which is not dissimilar to the readings we're getting from the Gibson ceramic pickups installed in the Les Paul and the Flying V. I could go on and on, but I think the question has been well and truly answered at this point. Yes, neck and bridge pickups are different from one another to compensate for the volume and tonal differences of sitting at a different space underneath the string. This, coupled with the need to correctly set the height of the pickup, will get the most balanced sound for both volume and tone and have our guitar sounding consistent no matter what position the pickup selector switch is in. If you get any questions of your own that you're too afraid to ask, please do leave them in the comments and perhaps they'll become the topic of a future Tata video. And don't forget to click all the buttons you're supposed to make this video viable to the ever-changing whims of the YouTube algorithm. That's all for now. Keep it loud and stay safe. Pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-piffle.